Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 113th episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Reimbursement 101 with Amy Plano. I am so excited today to bring to the podcast my friend, Amy Plano. You likely know her as the reimbursement dietitian. And, I've been reflecting on the fact of how have we had so many podcast episodes and Amy's never been on the podcast, but she's here now. And I'm so glad because many of you know that I don't work with clients. So my brand dietitian side hustle is so broad. And a lot of you, you're like, I want to work with clients. I want to do insurance. And I'm like, go see Amy. Amy is your go-to person. So I'm so excited, Amy, to have you here today to share with your audience, share with my audience all about reimbursement. And for those who don't know Amy, she is the reimbursement dietitian. You can find her on Instagram. She's got an amazing website with tons of resources. At the end, she'll share some more resources for you. But Amy's mission is to help dietitians simplify the process of accepting insurance in their practice. And she teaches dietitians how to make money in a health insurance-based payment model. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to share with our listeners as we get started?
No, I'm just really excited. I am more excited because it's been so fun to watch your journey. So to me, this is a privilege to be on the show. I'm honored. So thank you for having me. And thank you for sharing your story with everybody and inspiring all of us just to do really cool, epic stuff. I love it.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm trying to think of how we first met because I found out about you very early on in my entrepreneur game. And you have been on my website since my website's been live.
Yes, I love it. I know. So grateful.
But I'm trying to remember, I'm like, when did I first meet you? I know I see you at Fincy. I saw you at the Practice Revolution Live. I see you at events, but I can't pinpoint the exact moment that we met, but so grateful we have met.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So let's dive into the conversation of reimbursement. So I guess the first question I have for you is why reimbursement? Why is this a model that dietitians should be pursuing?
Yeah, a really good question. And so for me, one of the reasons why very many moons ago, so in 2007, I graduated from my internship and I went right into reimbursement. And I didn't know what I was doing, but for me, everything came back to my core values, which was part of my why. And so one of the things that was really important for me at that time, I was working with eating disorder patients, which I no longer do, but what I was seeing was the accessibility of care. And so their inability not only to afford their regular treatment, let alone nutrition. And even though I knew that it was going to be hard and heavy and frustrating, I also was coming out of my internship where I had just done some really hard things. And not to say that I felt like Superwoman, but looking back on my internship, I was like, oh my gosh, if I can do that, I can do this. And so for me, it's always been about, I want to be able to help the people that need my services, not just the ones that can afford them. So that has always been the overreaching why insurance, why now, and things have changed. And so I would say the average reimbursement rate in the United States, the lower end, I'm going to say not even average, is about $100 per hour. And so when I left Yale in 2014, I was board certified in renal. I was a CDE. I had a master's degree, and I also had 6 years of experience. I worked in research, and I was making $33 an hour. And so, but with that being said, I did not love my job. I really enjoyed doing what I was doing. But for me, if I can make an impact and make really good income, it's kind of a no-brainer. I am also at that stage in my career, the social media wasn't a thing in 2007, but for many dietitians now, I like the option for insurance because it removes the pressure of social media marketing. And so if that's not your first love and it's just not something that is natural for you, then, from an insurance-based standpoint, you're listed in their directories. Most of our patients are referral based from doctors. So the marketing piece is key for a lot of dietitians. And then the last piece I think is self-evident, but not always so self-evident, but most patients pay a lot of money for their insurance, especially if you're self-employed, and so what most dietitians don't realize and what most patients don't realize is many patients have unlimited visits using very generic codes. And so it's kind of like they're already paying for this service. Why not raise awareness and have them utilize it? The dietitian wins, the community wins because then we can get people healthier. The healthcare wins because now we have dietitians as the experts and at the forefront. So for me, I always love a model where there's not a single winner. And so for me, it's just like, that's kind of why insurance. I can't imagine not accepting insurance, So, but yeah, I mean, and it's been a journey. I mean, don't get me wrong. And it is not all rainbows and unicorns and pink glitter, because I would be living my best life if it was. But I still think I'm living my best life, even as an insurance-based dietitian, because we're able to just have a tremendous impact. Yeah, that's most important.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I think for a lot of dietitians, I always say this, school taught us to be dietitians. It didn't teach us to make money. It didn't teach us how to be a business owner. So I think a lot of people want to work with clients. They want to take insurance, but they're so overwhelmed
Mhm.
by all of the moving parts.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping as we have this conversation,
Yeah.
some of those walls are starting to
Sure.
decrease from people. And I just want to remind everything that everything is figure outable, and
Oh, 100%.
it's going to be confusing at first because we don't know it yet. But
Of
I
course.
love what you do and how you help dietitians, and even all your free resources is that you take something that to me, it sounds super confusing, but you break it down and you show
Oh,
people
yeah.
this is doable. We can help people. And I feel like you also make it fun in the process, which is pretty awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think what I really realized early on as an entrepreneur and as a business owner was, simple scales, fancy fails. And I think that if I am able to do that on a daily basis and have that mantra, like when I show up on Instagram or when I'm responding to a DM, and saying to myself, like, can I chunk this down? Can I make this simpler? Because I think for most dietitians, they don't need more information because they have information overload and knowledge overload. For me, it's much more tactical. Like, can I take what you already know and break it down into small steps so it makes sense, and for me, I never want to leave a conversation with somebody not asking the question, does that make sense? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to say, like, okay, do you understand why I said this? Or does this make sense to you? And I always say, you don't need to yes me, because I understand this is confusing. Can we go back? Because I think dietitians have analysis paralysis and they are very overwhelmed by what they don't know, not because they're weak, because they don't want to fail. And I know you've talked about this a lot, and I love when you talk about it. But our successes are made by our failures. And if you
Yeah.
don't fail, you will not be successful. And I was in tears listening to your story, when I heard you speak last, but that's so important in the scope of insurance is it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like nobody's coming after you. Like there's this, I feel like there's this like so much fear mongering. And it's like, I don't do it, so I don't know who's doing it. But like the same way you would make mistakes in blogging or running your business, like nobody's coming to arrest you. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I love everything about that. So, as we start to break this down, I'm going to start with a very
Sure.
simple question that probably a lot of us mix up. But let's talk about if someone's like, yes, I want to accept insurance.
Sure.
What does that mean high level? If I accept insurance, do I accept all insurance? Do I need to get set up with the
Sure.
different insurance companies? Is there one
Yeah.
thing I get set up
Great
with? What
question.
about Medicare? All those things.
Sure. Yeah. So just to set the premise, you can be cash based and insurance based. So you don't have to choose either or. And you can selectively choose which insurance companies you want to participate with. So for example, with Medicare, they still only cover, CKD
Yeah.
and diabetes. Not much has changed in that arena quite yet. So for example, if you're working with eating disorders and that is your jam, I'm probably not going to steer you down that direction first. That's not to say maybe down the road, now that we have a lot of bills in Congress and things may change. So from a high level standpoint, you can cherry pick whoever you want to participate with. With that being, and just to clarify, the range is pretty substantial in between insurance carriers. So there's no universal rate. And just to give you an example, my lowest payer in Connecticut, which is also my biggest volume. So like 400 plus patients a month have this insurance. My rate for them is say $75 an hour. For that exact same service of medical nutrition therapy, another insurance company may pay me $169 an hour. So I always say you take the good with the awesome, because even at $75 an hour, it's double what I was making at Yale, and on my own terms. But yeah, so you can cherry pick who you want to work with. One of the nice things, and I feel like the biggest hurdle for most dietitians is getting started.
Yeah.
And so the first resource that I created is the opt-in on my homepage is a cheat sheet that not only is a cheat sheet, but also walks you through the first 5 steps. And it does it both written and visual, because I think some dietitians do really well with video. So I've tried to do, both, just to kind of, drive the point home. But it's actually shockingly 5 pretty simple steps. It's that in the back of the dietitian's head, they feel like it's so complicated. And so I just break it down for you guys exactly what you need to do. And then you can selectively choose who you want to participate with. But the 5 major insurance companies in every single state are Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, and United Healthcare. And then the 5th one would be if you participate with Medicare. Yeah. So yeah. So like I burned my head when I first started with insurance. I thought there was like millions of insurance companies. The reality is like there's only really 4. So, but yeah, that's kind of the direction you would go, kind of high level. And it's really like put one foot in front of the other. And they're not like complicated steps. I think what happens is some dietitians might do them out of order. And that's where they get frustrated. But there's generally never a problem that I can't help you fix,
Yeah.
There's not it's not like detrimental, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, I don't know, like dietitians, like they're just fatalist. It's like, it's all good. We'll fix it. We'll fix it.
Yeah. So if we take out Medicaid, that's just for insurance companies. And so am I right to understand that you get set up with each one? I'm assuming there's probably application
Yeah,
process.
it's just an application. Correct. Yeah. It's like an application process. And that's why I'm fascinated that dietitians, it's the fear of the unknown, but they will like give away their power in dollars to credentialing companies that are literally just filling out an application for them. And like, that's frustrating for me, because like basically my free resources do that for you. But like, that's the level, like something as basic as an application, which we do probably several times a week doing other things. We're just, we have this narrative that we've been told that it's going to be really scary and complicated. And if it's not, I think this is also really interesting when dietitians go through the process, like most of them do it correct, but like they're just second guessing themselves the whole time. So like they're just freaking, like they're, it's like they're giving themselves on, so then like I'll look at what they're doing. I'm like, no, you're totally cool. You just got to wait. Like, you're good, man. You're good.
Sometimes that's all we just need. Just tell me I'm doing it right.
Of course. I spend a lot of my time reinforcing really good stuff. Like, no, we're good. That looks great. You know what I mean? You're good. Don't worry,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
So when you apply for these, is it based on state, or is it once you apply, is it national? If you're licensed in different states, it covers different states, or is it by? Okay.
Yeah. So the way that it is, you need a physical location in the state in which you're going to credential.
Yep.
You cannot be a virtual only insurance-based dietitian. That is a thing of the past. So you will need a physical location. That can look like different things. That could be your house if you want to use your house. That could be you're renting some space out of a gym, or you're leasing from a chiropractor. I actually used to rent space from my now husband, who wasn't my husband at the time. I paid like $20 per patient. I saw them out of his gym. Um, so there's different arrangements, but you do need that physical address. But once you are credentialed in one state, because these are national products, right? So like if I am in Washington State, actually, which has really good rates, as long as I have a physical location there, all of my reimbursement is done through that location. And so if I am credentialed in Washington State or Oregon State with like a Primera or a Regents as my Blue Cross Blue Shield product, I can then see patients in Connecticut, any state, as long as I'm watching licensure rules, right? I can see them in any state. So for example, say you're in Washington or you're in Oregon on the West Coast where you are, and Connecticut is a non-licensure state, you can see Blue Cross Blue Shield patients and then just bill them through your Regents or your Primera, which actually works out really nicely for you because those rates are 3 times higher than if you were a Connecticut-based dietitian. So you don't get my rates, you get the West Coast rates, and everything funnels through there. So I don't know if dietitians understand that piece, because dietitians will come to me and they'll say, well, I want to be credentialed in every single state. And I'm like, well, number one, you don't need to. And number two, why not start slow, like small and local? Because we see 500 patients a month. I live in Connecticut. Connecticut's the size of a toenail. And those patients are all coming within like a 5 to 10 mile radius of my town. Remember, like we don't have city, like there's no cities in Connecticut. Like, you know what I mean? And there's 7 other insurance-based dietitians in my city, in my town, and 4 of them have gone through my coaching program, and all 7 are killing it. Meaning, like, there's plenty of sick patients going around. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we're all good. So yeah, so that's kind of how it works. But I don't think dietitians understand that. You don't need to credential in every state. You credential in one state, and then as long as the plan is a PPO plan, which is like just a wider network, like you go East Coast, West Coast, you go, but I say that, and that sounds really sexy and cool. But what I much rather see dietitians do is start on a local level. I think as business coaches, mentors, we have painted this picture of like virtual nutrition, which I think is great. But I think a lot of dietitians underlook the power of what's within their location. You know what I mean? Especially if that's where they grew up, or, I did my internship at Yale. I worked at Yale. So when I left Yale on really good terms, they basically like said to me, we're going to dissolve the clinic that you are running here. We're not even going to replace you. We're just going to refer patients to you in your practice. So like, I mean, like that was like a steady stream of like hundreds of patients per month. So I think a lot of dietitians get really excited by the shiny objects of being virtual, which you can be virtual. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can see patients from home, or I can go into my office and I'm paid the same rate. But I have never been one for like that doesn't excite me. Like, you know what I mean? Just because I have a brick and mortar that's a hybrid doesn't mean that I don't travel around the world, right? Because I work for myself. So it's like some patients want to be seen in person, especially if you're working in weight management or those types of spaces. So yeah, I just want sometimes as a coach or a mentor, like we have to bring people back to like the roots and the fundamentals, which is before COVID, we didn't have virtual nutrition to the extent we had. And I think it's amazing, but I don't want dietitians to like miss what's right under their nose.
Yeah, yeah. And I like what you're saying, because so much of it is like, let's not overcomplicate it. Let's get started. Because once you
Exactly.
get started, I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes we spend so much time
Oh my goodness.
learning, and then we're thinking. I was reading in a book yesterday and it says, oh gosh, I butcher quotes, but it was something about how like it's like ripping off a band-aid. The hardest part is thinking about it.
Mhm.
And I think so much of us are focused on like, I'm going to learn more, I'm going to learn more, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to stress, I'm going to worry about all the what ifs. But
Yeah.
if we just do it, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm doing it, okay, what am I going to figure out next? So I
Yeah.
like that idea of start simple, start local. I hope people picked up on what you said earlier on, like it's not like you have to have this massive social media presence. People refer to you.
Of
I actually
course.
get emails all the time for people who want to work with me as a geriatric dietitian, but I'm like, so
Absolutely.
sorry. So it's a way where you don't have to worry about marketing, which is
No.
very, very challenging. Marketing is hard. it's doable, but there's lots of pieces to it.
course,
So
of course.
start local. You can have clients a little bit easier than some of the, private pay methods. And from there, you can continue to grow and learn all these things. So
Course. Of course. Yeah. And just to piggyback on that quote, I really love the quote, money loves speed. And so while I know we are not all like money driven, our ability to make money relies on our ability to make decisions. And
yes.
our lack of decisions is a decision in and of itself, right? And so, you know, Mel Robbins has that book, like the 5-second rule. And, and I do that a lot, even into a cold pool, right? I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, jump. Like, and
Yep.
even in a lot of different areas of my business, I think business is like an experiment. And,
Yes.
and it's okay for it not, it's okay for us to have like a null hypothesis, right? It's okay for things to not go as planned because that's what research is. And so for me, like, I force myself a lot of times to take action, even though I know I am not ready.
Yes.
Because as we know, imperfect action is better than no action.
Yep.
But like you and I were talking about before, like you need momentum. The
Yes.
same way, like, that's why a lot of times, like, you need your clients to have some short-term wins in the early window. And so that gives them momentum. And so for dietitians, the same thing needs to happen. And so that's what I really like you identifying, like, local, don't complicate things, because one patient turns into 2 patients, which you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
would say in my experience from coaching thousands of dietitians through my program, I would say most dietitians, I'm going to say most because it's heavily nuanced in terms of building a practice. I would say usually around 8 months. So my program is 6 months, but at the 8-month mark, they're generally pretty close to their capacity. I would say usually at around 10 to 12 months, they're as busy as they want to be. And, once again, heavily nuanced, but I can say that as an average, just as watching them go through this over the years, I would say usually 12 months, they're ready to hire new dietitians to their team. And so, and those are the dietitians that put in the work. Like, you know what I mean? I know that that's nuance in terms of how busy somebody is, but there is tremendous potential behind insurance, and it makes a lot of things easier.
Yeah.
Yes, it also, there is a learning curve. But I needed to know during my internship how to piggyback the fat on a TPN in the NICU on like a micro penny baby. You know what I mean? That was like, so it's like, if we can do hard things like that, it's like, why can we not figure out, especially when I've done a lot of the thinking for you, like, and I tell you most days on Instagram how to do stuff. Like, so, you have somebody that's done it before you, and, so you don't have to worry about that piece. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned your website before, and I'll have it in the show notes, but Amy's website is reimbursementdietitian.com.
Correct.
You can just Google reimbursement dietitian and her SEO is on point because it comes
I
up.
know. And it's so funny, like, just to talk about SEO, because when I called it reimbursement dietitian, my father was like, God rest him, he's passed since. He was like, that's the worst name. Like, you know what I mean? He was like in his 80s. And I was just like, dude, SEO. And like he looked at me like I was crazy. And he did have a Facebook account, like, so he wasn't like technology challenged, but when I am just to drive home the point of SEO, a lot of times I am looking for new information about, reimbursement and dietitians. And I cannot get past my website and my SEO because that's all that's coming up. And even in Chat GPT, it's basically like pulling stuff off of my website when I am looking, you know what I mean? I'm just like dying because I'm like, no. Like I wrote that. So I need some more information beyond that on that code. But yeah, no, SEO, you're totally right. Like, yeah, like I could not agree with you more in terms of putting in that search criteria. Yep.
For sure. So I kind of want to go back to, so we talked about insurance. There's really
Yeah.
4 biggies that Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, United. You apply. I do have a question though.
Sure.
What are the things that a
Yeah.
dietitian needs to have done before they apply? I heard you say physical
Yeah,
location, but what are the
absolutely.
other parts they need before they
Yeah,
jump in and
absolutely.
apply?
And that's what my little cheat sheet will show you on the website, but you need to have an NPI type 1. You want to have your business entity. So are you going to be a sole prop, LLC, or S corp? obviously I'm going to recommend LLC, not S Corp or sole prop. But I do have resources on that on my website as well. So you need to have an MPI, which is free. If you have an MPI, say you worked for somebody else, or you were like me, like, I worked for Yale outpatient while I was building my business. And so they had credentialed me. So they had an MPI on me. So your MPI is like your social security. It follows you wherever you go, and multiple people can be using it at one time. So it's not tied to the entity, it's tied to you. So MPI, business entity, physical location, malpractice insurance, which you are, if you are a member of the academy, it is 4 times like cheaper through the academy than it is on your own. Many of the dietitians in my coaching program are not members of the academy, but they will join the academy just to get the discount. And then you fill out what's called the CAQH application, and that is found on CAQH ProView. It's just like a website, and it's almost like the Common App. I laugh because when I applied to college in the 90s, this was all on paper. I'm sure when you applied, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, so it was a paper application. And when I applied for my internship, it was also a paper application, plus DICUS at the time. But anyway, so it's like the common application where you put in all of your information. So you have to enter it in once. So it's like you would put in where you did your internship. Do you have like an alias? Like, are you married? Are you divorced? Like, what have you gone by in the past? Where do you live? Like, upload your license, upload your malpractice insurance. And so that's really the first those are the main steps. And then you just reach out to each insurance company. Most of it is done online. So like you put in, provider application, Aetna, and it like takes you to the provider side and you put in an application. So as long as you have done those first steps, like, you're good. Like, it's really not like, like I said, I don't want to take credit for like anything fancy. That's how you do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's kind
steps.
yeah, that's kind of cool about the common application, because that's gonna, you get everything in the system. It sounds like it
Everything's
makes
in
it
there
easier.
once.
Yep.
Yeah. So like you will put in a minimal amount of information when you even put in the application. Like, so it's like your name, it's like filling out like an opt-in form. Because all of your information is already in the system. They're going to circle back into that common app and make sure you're legit. But like, if you, and then we'll catch stuff like, if your like license is expired, like they're not going to credential you. If you didn't renew your CDR, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to catch pieces like that because they have to go to the licensure board. Like, they're vetting you. That's what they're basically doing. And that process can take anywhere from 45 to 90 days. So what that means is like, so your application will go through like a committee. They will pull up your CAQH. And the reason why a lot of these things take a long time is that they might only credential dietitians like once every 6 weeks. And so you go into that cohort and you're waiting based on, when you apply. So, in most states, credentialing to contracting is about 3 to 4 months. And if you're in a state like Connecticut that has an Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield product, which is 13 states, that product takes about 6 months. So there's like California has Anthem, Virginia. So that product takes longer. But I would say as a whole, pending you did everything correctly. And I just want to be very clear and not to be a jerk. A lot of times dietitians like don't do things correctly. And so what happens is, then they go and they say, insurance really stinks. And then I go and I look at their stuff and it's like, it's not correct. And so like, I'm not blaming them, but I also don't want them to blame insurance because these are dietitian errors. Like these are not errors. These are errors we can fix, but dietitians get frustrated, but a lot of times like they are not the victim. They were a participant by accident. Like they put in the wrong EIN number and now they're mad because the contract has their social security, but they didn't give them their EI. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so it doesn't have to be as hard as it is. And if it does feel hard, it's input error. And that's not a bad thing. We can fix those things. But I want to be very clear that as a whole, it's fairly straightforward. And I'm air quoting over here for anybody listening, fairly, because there's always going to be stuff that like defies gravity.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with every area of business. So that's
Exactly.
helpful to know that it takes, it takes a little bit. So if you're like, I'm going to see patients next week. Okay,
Oh,
let's
absolutely. 'Cause I'll
let's
get
get our
people
stuff
like,
in.
yeah, I'll get like dietitians in a panic, like, I want to get rich fast. And I'm like, so like you have the wrong girl. Like, you know what I mean? This is all about sustainability, long term and
Yeah.
big impact. Like, this is not a get rich scheme. Like, I don't know like where you heard that, but like you're not going to have a contract in your hand until like 4 or 5 months, like if we're lucky.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things to your point is that it's these, I'm glad that we're we're picking up like the potholes, because I think a lot of dietitians, I think one of the biggest mistakes in this space is the expectations. And so the difference between expectations and reality is enough to calm people down. When I'm like, oh, no, you're good. Like, you have an Anthem product. Oh yeah, you got like another 3 months on that. You know what I mean? You're good. Just like wait it out. And I think like you and I were talking about, like, that's reinforcements, but they just don't know. Like, they think they did something wrong. I'm like, no, you're good. Like, you're good. Show me your stuff. No, you're good. You got another 2 months. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I worked for the federal government for over a
yeah.
decade, so I am very patient.
I see it. Yeah. And I am, and just to be very clear too, like, people sometimes will reach out to me and they think I am like, I have like a magic hat or something. Like, I hire dietitians to my team and I go through the same exact process. Not only do I go through the same process, any mistake you have made, I have probably made it worse. And so
Yeah.
like just because I have done this hundreds of times and just because I teach this, I am not like, my practice goes through the same issues, that every other practice goes through. Like, it's just how I react to it. It's very, yeah, nothing really bothers me. Like, I always say, I've been audited by the IRS and I've lost both of my parents. And I always say, like, you cannot rattle me. There is nothing you can ever say. And I am an insurance-based dietitian. Like, I'm good. Like, bring it. Yeah, I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? There is literally like, there's nothing. So when like, you know what I mean? There's been times when I haven't been paid for 6 or 7 months with a team of 10 people. But with that being said, I have 6 months of operating expenses. So it's like, you learn over time how to, but there's nothing that will ever scare me in the world of insurance. You just, like you said, you wait it out. You work for the federal government. Like, it's going to, everything will work itself out. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, and I loved what you said. This is not a get rich quick scheme. That same thing with blogging. It's a long-term game, but it is
It's
so
long
worth
term.
it.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
honestly, there is no such thing as the get rich quick scheme. I mean, those
No.
are schemes for a reason, but there's so many amazing, legit ways that we can start building businesses and making impact and helping people. So,
Sustainable businesses. Yeah. I mean, like,
absolutely.
anything
Absolutely.
can make money on a long enough time horizon. And I would say, from my experience with working in business, I would say successful, whatever that means for them, are the dietitians who are able to delay long term, you know what I mean? Like, short-term pain for long-term benefits. You know what I mean? Single-handedly, that has been the best advice, or the best thing that I have ever internalized, is like, think big picture. Like, it's like acute versus, it's like running the 5K versus the marathon, two very different modes of preparation. And like, I am running the marathon of business. My goal is not to win at business. It's the ability to keep playing, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Winning at each separate level, but it's an infinite game, with confusing rules. But I'm not here to win. I'm here to just keep on playing as long as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that analogy. So I feel like that was really helpful for breaking down for people like,
Yeah.
okay, it's going to take a few months. The things you need your
Ah,
NPI. Most of you probably have an NPI.
yes,
If you have a job,
exactly.
you just
I
got to
hope you
find out where
have
it
it.
is.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. You just got to find it. It's out there. You have to set up your
And
business.
it's
If you're,
public. So it's
yep,
like, so if
you
somebody
can
else
find it.
did it,
Yep.
it's still yours. You just need to know the number. It's whatever,
Yep.
wherever it is.
Yeah, yeah. Before I left the VA, I snagged that number so that way I didn't have to dig it up later because it was in my
Yeah.
files. So I'm like, oh, I need just in case. So,
Yeah.
so next step was setting up your business, and
Yeah.
I actually refer people to your website. And we mentioned this before, or I
Yeah.
mentioned it before we started recording. But if you go to reimbursementdietitian.com, the resources, there's a drop down with
Yes.
so much information,
Yes.
but I'm going to look at it. I'm going to tell you guys exactly where to go. Go to
Okay.
business basics and then click on setting up your nutrition practice, sole prop, LLC, and corp. And it is
Okay.
wonderful. It walks through all the details you need. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yes.
I know, Amy, you said you recommend LLC. That's what I have. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of it. Once you get your business set up and you get your EIN, which is a
Yeah.
social security number for your business, then
Hmm.
you need to have your physical location, your malpractice insurance, and then fill out all the application stuff. So
And you're good to go. You know what I mean? So yeah, and just make sure like your license are active, whatever you need in your state. They will check that. They will verify that with the Department of Health or wherever your license is held.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love that you have all these resources too on your
Oh,
website. So
absolutely.
if anyone's like, okay, that's as clear as mud, go to Amy's website. She's
Exactly.
she's got resources to help you walk through all of the things. So I could talk to you forever. I'm gonna ask you one more question before we start
Sure,
wrapping
sure,
things
sure.
up. But I would love to hear a little bit more about like billing and coding. And I feel like
Sure,
that's something that's overwhelming to
sure.
people. They're like, well, what do I bill? What do I code? How do I figure out
Yeah,
that stuff? Any tips you have for people once you get accepted? You're like, okay, let's go.
yeah,
I'm ready to accept, but how the heck do
sure.
I actually bill and code and all
Yeah,
that?
so I have tried to create a ton of free resources even
Mhm.
on that. And so one of the ways that I blog and so I have a pretty extensive YouTube channel um that goes over a lot of billing and coding stuff. And what I've been trying to do as of lately is anything that I would put on my Instagram stories, I record as a longer version later on in the day. And I have been uploading that to my YouTube reimbursement dietitian website. I'm sorry, that side of
Yeah.
YouTube. But I also have a very inexpensive cheat sheet that people that is sold like, I think 1100 versions as of lately, and that
Yep.
summarizes each insurance company. I want to say, and I'm not even saying this because I created that, like that is like the diamond in the rough because it shows
Mm.
you how to bill each one. Because every insurance company is different. There are consistencies across the board. What I would say would be a universal way to think about billing insurance is the best benefits are on the preventative side. And so, for
Mm.
example, and I should generally always qualify the fact that I work in weight management. And so most of my patients are overweight. Most of them have a cardiovascular risk factor or prediabetes. Although many of our patients we bill with a very generic code. So most Blue Cross Blue Shield products have unlimited visits and you only need like a very basic code that doesn't represent anything. And so it's very easy to bill that. Where other insurance companies will favor if your patient is overweight or obese or has a cardiovascular risk factor. Um, Insurance companies like Aetna give everybody 10. You know what I mean? So a lot of times you're looking at 10 to unlimited on the majority of these plans. Cigna is unlimited, once again, with very generic codes. So so we're, we've really more in but say you are an eating disorder dietitian listening to this, or you're a GI dietitian listening to this, those conditions are covered. They're just not on the preventative side. And so what that means is that when the Affordable Care Act went into play in 2015, the federal government said, we don't want to penalize people for seeking out preventative services. So we're not going to we're going to enforce that no insurance company can charge them a copay or even make their deductible applicable. But the way that nutrition works in medical nutrition therapy is the exact same way your doctor's office works. So if you go for your annual physical, they bill it with a generic Z code and you don't pay anything. You go in, 3 weeks later and you have strep throat, you pay your copay or your deductible. That's the same way eating disorders, GI, those are medical conditions, super well covered, but they will have a cost share because they're not rewarding the patient for having an eating disorder. They're not rewarding them for having celiac disease. So they will have a cost share, but it's a different space. But it doesn't matter where you practice as a registered dietitian, there is still really good coverage to be had. It's just you can't get blood from a stone. And so I get a lot of questions from dietitians, have this patient, they're normal weight, they have Crohn's, they have this insurance. And I'm like, they're just going to have to pay their copay like that. Like, you know what I mean? But it's not an MNT thing. This is the same way. Like if you went to your OBGYN for your annual versus like a UTI, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think people get really frustrated with like that piece. And I'm like, but that's medicine. Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? So yeah, but as a whole, I would say we're really in a good place with coverage. And I would say like the average reimbursement rates are $100 or better, you know, per hour. Yeah, so I think we're in a good place in terms of what is covered. But yeah, I really try to create a ton of resources. So as people have questions, if somebody DMs me a question, I'm like, oh, okay, hang tight. I'm going to do a video on that, or I'm going to create a free resource. So if you're listening to this and you have questions and you follow me, I do very well with direction. So if you guys have major questions that you have seen that I have not answered in public forums, there's a good chance that they just have not been a part of my awareness. Like I don't have any secrets. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not on the other side of Instagram, like pretending like not to answer you. Like, I'm not going to send you to my price list. Like, you know what I mean? I'm also probably one of the only coaches who has public prices. You know what I mean? Like I've never hidden my prices. They're on my website. They're like clear as mud. It's like, click here, like with my big head, like, but yeah, like I'm not here to hold anything back. I'm here to make our field stronger. And I feel the best way to do that is to serve first. So whatever you guys need, you let me know and I will do my best to deliver. But I'm not like, you don't need to be in the dark about insurance unless you want to be. But you know what I mean? Hopefully I can change that.
Yes. I feel like my takeaway I'm hearing is there is no excuses. If you want to do reimbursement, there is help out there.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And I also, I'm a girl full of quotes like you are, but like, I often say this and maybe it comes out the wrong way, but choosing to struggle is a choice when it comes to insurance, because there is no shortage of Amy P free resources. And there is no shortage of stuff that like I can change your practice with a $40 cheat sheet. So, you know, I really believe that. Like I will say that like I struggled for the first decade. I don't know if that was a choice because nobody you know what I mean? Like in order to be the OG, like somebody needs to blaze it. But yeah, I do really believe struggling is a choice at this point. So I like how you summarized that and came to the same conclusion that, yeah, you can do this. You guys are capable of doing like literally, like if I can do this out of my internship, like, so my internship was like a full year and it was 1,500 hours. I know they're not even that anymore, but like we weren't able to take our test until October. So like I finished in September. 6-week like waiting period. It's like I was applying to like Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield like November 1st of like 2000s. Like, you know what I mean? If I went all in then, like you guys are good. Like we got you. We got you. Yeah.
Yes. So I know throughout this whole podcast, we've been throwing out resources, but since we're at the end, what are some resources that you recommend for listeners who are like, yes, I am ready to learn more. I'm ready to take the next step. What's some great resources to get started?
I love that. Yeah. So like, I would say, you know, I think you have highlighted this very good, but like head over to my website. It's Reimbursement Dietitian. Like I said, there is, you know, on my homepage, like you will literally get like a 7-day video series of walking you through the steps. You know, and so all of the resources are there for getting started. If you want to work with me, there's an application on there. It's important for me that people are ready. I am not like, I hate, you know, I don't like promise, you know what I mean? Like in anybody that's worked with me before will tell you like I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. So whatever you guys need, I'm here. I'm also super active on Instagram. So reimbursement_dietitian. And then I've really done my best. Like I looked at it yesterday and I was so impressed, which I'm never impressed with any of the things I do, but I have a pretty like extensive like YouTube channel, like answering all of your major questions. I was like, wow, like dang. But yeah, so yeah, and I'm just available to help. Like I said, I try to make myself accessible. Yeah, I don't want it to be hard. It doesn't have to be hard. Yeah.
Awesome. And so probably the best place for listeners to go is going to be reimbursementdietitian.com,
Yeah.
because if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see the link to get to Instagram, YouTube, all the
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. I know. Yeah. And I just,
Everything's there.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
if you click on the store tab, it has that little cheat sheet that Amy's been
Yes.
talking about. And then also, if you're listening and you're like, this is amazing, I want to work with Amy. She's got some amazing programs out there. So go check them out. The value is you're going to get, I mean, Amy, I love that you give it all away for free. You provide so much value, but sometimes I think it's helpful when we're in a group, when we're in a program, we're learning
Oh,
all the ins and
absolutely.
outs. We have that person to ask, am I doing it right? It's so helpful.
Absolutely.
So if your
Yeah.
dream is like, I don't just want to dabble, I want to go all in. Go
Oh,
check out Amy's
absolutely.
stuff. She goes above and beyond, so I definitely
Yeah, we
recommend
have
going to
about
check it out.
120 to 130 dietitians that come through each year. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, that's the best part of my day. But yeah, like I love that program is the best thing I've ever done. So yeah, so definitely if you're interested, put in an application. And I'm super swift. You will hear from me probably within 10 hours of putting it
Wow.
in.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amy,
Thank
for
you for
coming on the
having me.
podcast. I feel like we've covered so much stuff. This
I
was a great
know.
reimbursement 101 kind of
Exactly.
introduction and beyond. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. Is there anything else you want to say before we close things down?
No, thank you for having me.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, bye,
See you
guys.
soon. Bye. Thanks.